Welcome into Scarves Around the Funnel, episode 365, part 2. This is part of a trilogy with the former Hearts boss, Jim Jefferies. In part 1, we heard about his early years at Hearts as a player and as a manager, and we also heard about how he eventually decided that he would be swapping Hearts for Falkirk, but not without a U-turn in there as well. We also heard him talking about his relationship with John McGlynn, who'll be in the opposite dugout against Hearts this weekend. That was all in part 1. Coming up in part 2, it's Jim's first spell in charge as Hearts manager from 1995 to 2000. Enjoy. Do you remember your first win in charge as Hearts manager? It was a friendly.
Friendly. I didn't get my first game was Newcastle at home in the testimonial match. It was supposed to be, but it ended up because of the opening of the new stand. I think it was Newcastle, and what's the wee midfield player that played? Beat us. They beat us 1-0. Alan Shearer played, and
Beardsley scored the winning goal in that one.
Beardsley scored the winning goal. That was my first game, but I think the first league game, was it not?
No, your first win. What was your first win? It was a friendly. There's a reason I mention it, because there'll be kids, young kids that'll listen and go, no, that's no possible. How did they win? How did they score 5 goals?
God, I'll tell you, see, when you get older, your memory goes a little bit, so you'll have to remind me. We're talking a few years ago.
Hearts beat Manchester City 5-1 in your first win.
Oh, that was, yeah. Was that not some sort of tournament that somebody had?
It's just a pre-season friendly at Tynecastle, Saturday, 12th of August.
Was it?
And you won by 5 goals to 1.
They were
Brian Hamilton, Alan Johnson, John Cahoon got 2.
Yeah, they were in the championship at that time, weren't they?
Don't spoil it here. Let the youngsters think you've beaten the best team in the world. Come on, Jim.
True, definitely.
So that was your first.
Players, but I remember it now. Yeah, 5-1.
Oh, they had a good side. By the way, David Ginola played for Newcastle at the time. He played at Tynecastle, and you're right, it was 1-0. Niall Quinn, Ian Brightwell, and City were an okay side, but let's not spoil it by saying that they were shite when Hearts beat them 5-1. Now, I've identified a couple of games, right? One from this season, and it's games that I was at before I started kind of doing radio in '96. And one of them, this is going to make a lot of people listening shudder if they were there. Dundee 4, Hearts 4. League Cup quarter-final, Dens Park. Hearts lost on penalties because Henry Smith and Willie Jimison missed penalties. This is what you said to the media afterwards. I read the riot act to the players at halftime. We were 2-0 down. There were strong words, and I meant every single one of them. The first half performance was shocking. It's not up to the players to decide when they're going to play. Something will be done about this if that attitude continues. Did you feel like you had to put your foot down right at the start?
Yeah, I just didn't think we were playing well at that time. And, it was a big game. We had a big following up that night. There was a lot of expectancy of getting the job. And as I say, it was early into the career. We made a great comeback. I mean, we should have. Did we not lead 4-3 at that time? We were 4.
You were 4-3 down. Robbo scored a penalty. Alan Lawrence equalised to make it 3-3. Martin Vekhorst, because Henry made an error, and then Robbo's penalty made it 4-4 to take it into penalties.
The trouble was, when it came to penalties, it was, because we just trusted the players, because obviously it was the second or third game in charge or something, and so we got the boys, and we had players that didn't want to take the penalties. And somebody mentioned Henry Smith. He says because he strikes, and he is a good striker of the ball for goal kicks and that. And we sort of looked, and I looked at Henry and said, and he just more or less said, if you need me, because we couldn't get anybody to take. There was whether it was a responsibility or they didn't feel quite rightly, if they're not confident about taking the penalty, then they're not going to take it. So I was struggling to get penalty takers, because my thoughts are that the goalkeeper's got enough to do, try to save the ball without putting the pressure on and try to finish it. But I had to rely on one or two experienced players who said that in training he was different class with striking the ball. He used to do it a lot. He said, "Okay, how do you feel?" He says, "Yeah, I'll take it." He was the only one at that time who said that they would hit it, and he missed. And hello, hello.
If you were a bit more experienced as a Hearts manager, would you have said to him, "No, you're not taking that"?
No, I wouldn't. That convinced me. I'd never let my goalkeeper ever take a penalty again. Never. Don't care who it was and if he was good at it or badly. They've got enough to do when they're trying to concentrate and saving penalties, and they need that added pressure. So I said I would never, and I've never had to do it. And to be honest, I've never had a goalkeeper that's wanted or expected to take the penalty. So um, that convinced me that day. But that, as I say, I'd only just been there. I didn't know any that we couldn't get anybody that was looked confident to take the penalty in such a game. And when somebody comes up and says, "I'll do it," then you've got to hold it. But listen, it could have been an outfield player that missed it,
Sure, of course.
because that's just the way it is. But that was something that you learned that day that set me in good stead, that I would never ever put a goalkeeper in that position again.
He never played for Hearts again. Did you know that, Henry Smith? That was his last competitive game.
Yeah, not because of the penalty, though.
No, no, no. Just because he was old.
Actually,
He was 39.
I brought Henry Smith, who was out the picture before I went. They had Craig Nelson there, and I had moved. I was about to move Craig on to be part of a swap deal with one of the players at Falkirk that I brought, David Weir, along with Brian Hamilton, and him went, and we got David Weir in there, because obviously I found David Weir at Falkirk, and it only shows you how well he went on to do. But I brought Henry back into it because I felt he was a better goalkeeper that I had. But his career was coming to the end. He was 40 in his 40s, wasn't he, when he played that night? And
39 and a half, yep.
39. So it was nothing to do with the penalty. I had made my mind up, then I was going to get another goalkeeper, and it turns out that it was eventually Gilles. I had Lucy that eventually come in and did things,
That was quite the find. I mentioned that rant that you had at halftime. That was one of many you had at halftime, according to several of your former players. Gary Naismith says he will never forget the colour of your face, kind of a fire engine / lipstick red, when you wouldn't stop shouting at him at halftime against Falkirk at Ibrox in the Scottish Cup semi-final. His head was already spinning because of Kevin McAllister, and then you went in with a typical Jim Jefferies two-footed tackle. Was that one of your best high blood pressure moments as a Hearts manager? Was that your best
I think
rant?
I think it's exaggerating a little bit. I said I more or less put it to Gary. I said, "You're playing against a really good player. I brought him to Falkirk. I know how good he is." I says, "But you look as if you're in awe of him. You're letting him get too much room." That I says, "If you do that, you're going to find yourself out the team, showing that you can't handle it. You've got 45 minutes to make sure that you can." And even though he scored a terrific goal in the second half, he wasn't as effective as he had been in the first half. And I gave him a bit of praise after the game and said, "Listen, that was much better. I know he scored a great goal, but they could have the best left back in the world. It wouldn't have mattered at that situation, because Folk had a great move. Kevin did well, moved it in there. But I says he wasn't as effective in the second half as he was causing us the bother in the first half." And that's how it was. It was nothing raging or anything like that. But we let him know that we weren't happy, because we knew that he was a really, really good player, and that he was just maybe caught a couple of times and it affected his confidence. So we just said to him, "Look, I'm not taking you off, but if you want to play next week, right, you've got to go out here and show it." And he played well. But he was against a man who was in top form that
Yeah.
night. He was the best player on the pitch, and he got the right award after it. And he didn't deserve to be on the losing side, to be honest, Kevin, because he was so good. But we were the better team on the day because we were well on our pace. We could have been 3 up before Kevin's goal easily. We missed some really good chances, but I was pleased with him. And we missed Stevie Fulton that day because obviously he was injured, and that was a big news. So, but we got by. We got into that final. Because semi-finals are not about how well you play or how it goes. It's about being in the final, and that's was the one that we knew
Would you
we were after.
would you say you were a better manager or a better man manager?
I think you've got to be a bit of everything. I think you learn things as you go into management. That I think especially when you're at bigger clubs, it's better to not get involved in certain things because when you're taking a lot of things, especially never missed a day's training. We're always there. We did our bits, and Billy. It was always better if Billy took it because you could then spot and see what we were trying to put across, and I could stop it and say, Billy, we need that's not working, or this is working, and he could do better. Try this, try that. But I think if you ask a lot of the players that's the one thing I can always look back on. A lot of the players have come out, especially when they've been interviewed or talking on shows like this and that. They always enjoyed working for Billy and I. They enjoyed it. They knew everything that we did. And even when we were angry, it was nothing personal. It was always professional. It was always about being professional and things like that. And I could have a fallout with somebody nearly at blows sometimes, maybe not get away with that nowadays. I know that you would, you go up close with a couple of boys that I had at Falkirk. Finished on the Monday. Nobody ever brought it up or anything. We just spoke as if we've had our say. That's how I feel. You've got to react now. And but they were never treated or ignored or anything like that. They were treated very same on a Monday as everybody else. So, and they thought that was probably good man management to do that, and that's part of it. You've got to be a
Yeah.
good man manager as well as knowing what. But the big thing was it was building teams and knowing who could play and handle the pressures that big clubs would be in at, and we had that. We had that.
I'm going to give you an example of your man management and how good it was, but it doesn't involve a player, it involves me. And you're not going to remember this, but by God, I do. Because I still remember the dry cleaning bill that I shit myself after you did what you did. So I'm going to take you back, okay? And you'll remember this because the day was Monday, the 16th of September, 1996. It was 2 days after you'd been to Ibrox and you'd had 4 players sent off. But coming up quickly was a Coca-Cola Cup tie against Celtic the following midweek. So it was the usual pre-game press conference at Tynecastle the day before a game. It was on the back of those 4 sendings off at Ibrox on the Saturday. So I got to the ground as normal and I got through the front door and then you were there. You're not getting in. I said, what? Simon fucking Stainrod, you said. I was like, what about Simon Stainrod? Now, I worked with Simon Stainrod at the time at Scott FM. You hadn't heard this because you were at Ibrox, but Simon had made a comment after the game about Hearts' lack of discipline. And whoever's listened to that has told you, and I don't know what they've told you, but you weren't happy. So you weren't happy at Simon Stainrod, but Simon wasn't there. Scott FM was, and I was representing them. So you basically told me to fuck off, right? But you did it in a nice way, okay? You said, after that, you kind of took me aside and you said, look, it's not personal. And I appreciated that. He said, it's the old, it's no use, son, it's your paper. But there's the man management. You've given me both barrels. I'd done nothing wrong. Scott FM and Simon Stainrod had done so. You were 45. I was just 19 at the time. At what age do you think you eventually mellowed as a manager?
I think you just as goes on, the more experience you get, you just have to cope with everything. It's strange, isn't it? You've named a date there 16th of September, which has always had a bit of significance in my life because that was the 16th of September was the day that I had the heart attack.
Yep.
So it's a funny how you brought that up at with the 16th, because the date you never sort of forget. But yeah, listen, you do things. It's strange how you can sort of, like you said, let's just what players have had, not fallouts, but just more or less difference of opinions, and it's gone. Minutes later, it's gone. I've said my piece. I'm not going to go on about it. You know how I feel. We just get on with it now, and that's the basic the way to feel. That game that you're talking about wasn't down to indiscipline. It was down to some crazy, crazy. In fact, if you look, the referee never refereed another game. The linesman was dreadful. I bumped into him a couple of times because he comes, I think, from Dumfries, and he was in the boardroom one night when I was watching a game. In fact, I was down watching the boy McGowan, who was out in low in the air, and he was playing there, and I walked in, and he was the referee in the line, and we talked about it, and I had a bit of a smile about it, but I think they knew that we were crazy. I mean, how can you get sent off for kicking a post? I mean, it's just nonsense, and then two other decisions. And I've got to say, Richard Gough deserves a lot of credit that day because, I mean, it was 3-0, and he just got his team really to pass the ball around when we lost these players, and he knew that that could go on to be, and he knew that sendings off were crazy as well, and he showed a lot of great. He went up in a lot of people's estimation because a lot of tell these players to just make sure they pass it around, and really did force the issue to get more goals, which I don't know if Walter knew anything about that, but he did mention it as we pass him when he came out for a ball once. He said, "Don't worry," he said, "Well, this is ridiculous." Chris Robinson came down that day and wanted me to stop the game, and
He didn't know the laws of the game. He thought it should be abandoned, but you need another one.
need another one. And I said, "Look, if you stop the game, you want to walk off, didn't you want to wait for another one? You wanted to go, take the team off." And I says, "Well, this club's not got any money, so you better look into your pockets because you're going to get heavily fined by the SFA for doing this, especially with somebody like Jim Farry at the time who never started anything. So you're going to get heavily fined. You probably got banned from the next time you play in the tournament or league points or something like that." But we had to go in on Wednesday and play in this cup tie. Gary Naismith made his debut against Paulo Di Canio, probably the best winger in Scottish football at that time, great player, and had him in his pocket. And John
And
Robertson.
he won a bike. Gary Naismith won a bike.
So it was great that we got through because obviously John Robertson getting the penalty in extra time it went to as well.
It was, yeah. It was.
So yeah, great occasions, and but it was nothing to do with the discipline of the team. They were so keyed up when you go to Ibrox and you've got to get everything going in your favour. I mean, last week Hearts deserved to win against Rangers last week, but you've got to be honest. I mean, even Lawrence Shank's come out and says he handled the ball. You think that would be given right away, being at Rangers. The goal was a debate about the goal. I think if I was the manager of Rangers at the time, I thought the goal should have stood, and wee things that went their way, but that's what's happening at the moment, and you've just got to take advantage of it. And Hearts thoroughly deserved the win. It was a great win, and we're the better team by far. So, in those days, there was days there you go there and you just don't get a break, and everybody knows that it's difficult when you go through to that side. They all think you're paranoid, of course. And I remember when I was at Kilmarnock, I had Ian Durant in the back staff, and he said, they used to say that they're all paranoid when they come to. He says it's not till you go to Kilmarnock that you find out that they were right. He said, when he was in the backroom staff at Kilmarnock, went to Irish and he thought, Christ, they get everything, and he used to play with them for years and thought everybody else was paranoid. But no, that's what. But as I said, it wasn't about indiscipline. That was what
Oh, I knew
bugged
that, but you weren't for it.
me.
Steinrod just said stuff to wind people up. He was good at it though.
Was he not manager at Dundee at the time? Was he?
Well, he was working for us, so
Was it? Maybe
I think
left. Maybe left. He left.
it was
I
just
think.
after it was just after. By the way,
By the way,
after
it's
the
great
Celtic
lad.
game,
Great Simon. I took Simon forward. Simon was
I know.
fantastic for
Oh, he
us.
loves you. He loves you, but he
Absolutely
just
fantastic boy.
yeah. The after the Celtic game, by the way, in midweek, you were as good as gold with me.
Yeah,
No
yeah.
problem at all. There's an example
Nothing
of
personal, Mark. You know that.
nothing.
Nothing personal.
It
Nothing.
never was.
Never.
Now I'm going to fast forward to winning the cup in '98, and I thought I deserved whatever you threw my way because this is something I've done. And again, you'll not remember it, but I do. After the game, so it's about 45 minutes after all the celebrations and whatever, you've come out. I've gone downstairs to do the interview at the trackside. I was sitting beside Hugh Keevins for 90 minutes, and at the end, he's like, big man, he's giving him a penalty because Hugh's a big Celtic fan. And he slapped me, and my head's down. He slapped me on the thigh, and he's like, big man, he's no getting it, he's no getting a penalty. Anyway, after the game, first question I've asked you, whatever it was. And then as I've gone to put the microphone to your face for your answer, I have knocked the glass of champagne out of your hands, and the bubbles have gone all over your suit. And I'm thinking, shit, he's gonna go through me for this. And you just smiled, you gave me a hug, and you just another glass of champagne and answered the question. That was
Listen,
probably the only time you would have ever done that.
well, it's the only occasion it would have happened because obviously that just took anybody could have done anything that day to us because nothing was going to drown our sorrows and or make us angry given what had just taken place.
Oh,
So we knew that day. I said before in many interviews that on the day in the morning at the hotel, we just had this feeling that it was going to be our time. We knew it was going to be a tough game. We knew there's some things that I've mentioned many times that happened that week. Gascoigne's not there. Laudrup's on his way to Chelsea, even though I thought he played well in the final. It was always still
mhm.
going to be a problem, but maybe hopefully that he had to maybe watch himself a wee bit in case of injury. Alberts was ruled out because of sending off the week before.
At Dundee United, it was only because it was for violent conduct. If it had just been a normal sending off, he would have played.
And he, if you look at the track record prior to that, he was pulling Rangers out of all sorts of difficult situations with free kicks.
Yeah. Look
And
at the free kicks they had in the final.
you know, so again, he was missing. We we absolutely just obviously the plan we had was different from what we had all season. And that's what I said to the players that we can't play the same way because we've lost 13 goals in 4 matches against them. And if you're going to give a team 3 goals at a start before, we've no chance. So we have to play differently. And all the time we've been getting praise for attacking Rangers and going at them and making a game of it, we've been picked off easily. And so let's change it. And because of the players that are missing, Gascoigne's no longer there. Let them have, we'll sit a little bit deeper and let them come at us, and maybe we can hit them on break because we had people like
Hmm.
Neil McCann and Stefan Adam who were brilliant at getting in behind, and with good runners for the middle of the park in Cameron. So we said, but scoring the goal in the first minute just set us up because obviously the way we were going to play that suited us great. We had something to now hold on to and could still hit them on the break as we did for the second goal. And I think if Thomas Flugel's header just after scoring the second goal goes in any corner of the goals, it's 3-0 and
Game over.
straight game over. But you can never rule them out. And the thing is, I thought Willie was going to give the penalty, but as I
So
said,
did I.
down to the linesman. If the linesman goes to corner flag, it's a penalty. If he stays in
You're
the
done.
18, you're done. And Walter and I got on great. He was fantastic. I think if there's any team that was due to win against him, I'm not saying he wanted to get beat. No way. He's too competitive for that. But I think if he had to pick a team, it would have been ourselves because he was great in the 2 previous finals when we lost to them. But he still brought up a lot about Willie not giving the penalty. I'll tell you a really good story because not long after the final, another golf event was at the Renaissance in East Lothian. And Walter, when I got there, he must have been coming to play it as well. He must have been down for the weekend because if you've ever been to the Renaissance, you go in the clubhouse and it's got stairs that it's almost, vertical with it. But anyway, he goes, and he's at the top. I notice him when he comes in, he's standing with his wife there. And I thought, well, he must be through cleaning that. So I thought, wait, when I seen Willie in the car park. So I goes back down because he was waiting for me at top of the stairs because he was half acknowledged I was in and he seen me turn and go. So I said to Willie, listen, come on. So I went in with my hand round the shoulder of Willie and he had his hand round me and we walked to the steps. And Walter was, I knew you two were in. He was pointing in and shouting down at us. He knew it says there was something, it was rigged and all this sort of thing. It was pure fun, he was only having a laugh through it. So great guy, sadly missed Walter.
Oh, hugely.
Fantastic boy, the man he was. We got on
But
really well at everything, even when I was with Falkirk and had good results and gave him hard games. We were always sitting at a blather and him and Archie were just terrific. So
let's talk about the week in the build up to that, because you stayed the Friday night at Dunblane, resisted the temptation to get involved in the Cayley band on the Friday night. But the players were told of the team on the Friday afternoon. But at which point in the week leading up to the game, you went south with the squad to Stratford upon Avon, Forest of Arden. Did you and your coaching staff come up with your starting 11 and your formation and the way you played?
well, on the Sunday when we took them down on the Sunday, and the preparation was great. I mean, we couldn't get everybody on the flight to Birmingham where we were training, where Scotland trained at Stratford for the championships, and in England. And Craig Brown helped me a lot with the training people to contact and everything. So we went down the day before, and Chris says, well, we'll fly to London and then we'll get the coach. So the Hearts coach, set off when we were playing Dunfermline the Saturday, and Alan, the driver, was there to pick us up at Heathrow. Went to Forest of Arden, let them have a day on the golf course. But it started on the Monday when we got to the training ground. That when we moved to Stratford, we said that we explained how we played against them and how we were going to change. We're going to work on this in the morning, work on that in the afternoon. We knew, I think people knew, because there were only a couple of odd changes that we made in the training just to see in case we needed to change it. But basically 8 or 9 of the team knew that they were playing. So the only thing I didn't do was name the substitutes, apart from one person. And I didn't do it out of anything else other than, I didn't do it out of sentiment. It was John Robertson. And I pulled him aside on the Tuesday and I said, I think John was just delighted to be involved. And so I says, listen, you don't say anything or I'll leave you out if I do hear anything. Right? And I would have, if it gets out. But keep your mouth shut. You're on the bench. I've got 2 others to pick after it, but I won't tell them till the Friday or Saturday. And he was delighted about that, knowing that he was going to be part of it to start with, because obviously we had the team in mind. We left Jim Hamilton out, obviously because he had done well for us that year. And one of the reasons we put him off the bench other than John was because he was terrific in the air, and we knew they'd be pumping balls into the box late on. In fact, he won a couple of great headers for us.
He did.
When he went on. So, but the whole thing was prepared great. When we just trained up to the Wednesday, and the Thursday it was press day on the Tynecastle. I'm sure you were there, and we did nothing. Just let them mingle and get the interviews over. Friday we got in before we went to the hotel and just went through the set plays and didn't do any training because we knew it was going to be hot at the weekend. In fact, Walter said to me on Saturday he couldn't believe the team went on the park at 2:20 in that heat because his team didn't go out to 20 to 3. I says, but that just shows you how keen we were to get at you.
Mm.
We couldn't wait. So and a bit of a laugh with it. But no, I just knew. I said to the Billy and the backroom staff in the morning at the hotel, I just knew that was there. And you were right, on the Friday night, they were all tucked up in bed, and Billy and I just went for a walk, and we got cornered with a couple of people come over for autographs and invited us into this ceilidh that was going on, and it was put your left foot in and right foot in and all this. Billy wanted to get involved. I said, "You can, I'm just going up to my bed now before I get started." So it's all just great memories for me.
Yeah.
But the most important thing for us, and I've always said it, is it wasn't just about us and the team. It was about all the heartache in the '86 and all the cup finals that we just missed out. Players due to bad luck or not making mistakes and some or goalkeeping or a bad judgment. Because we believe that, and I've said it often enough, that 75% of that crowd at Parkhead that day probably believed they'd never see Hearts win a cup in because it'd been that so long. So it was for them, it was for all them to make up for it was. And I still get people, even though they've won it twice, it was a catalyst for the fact that when they beat Hibs 5-1, Paulo Sergio was great. He called me in, he says, "This is your team. I've not signed any of these players." He says, "It's your team that you built here that's gone on and winning it." And I thought that was good of him. But nothing will surpass
No.
98. I mean, Gary Locke's been involved in the three of them, and he
Mm-hmm.
said nothing will be ever like that again.
We never thought it was going to happen, Jim. That's why.
That's exactly right. That's what I said to you. 75% would believe they would never see Hearts win a trophy. And I get people now coming up saying it was the greatest. Now I go to a game, I'll get stopped. Greatest day of
It
his
was.
life, greatest day of their life. And you can just see with the celebrations that you wouldn't get away with that now. Some of the things that went on, standing
On
in
the roof of the bus.
oh, you know, somebody could have easily fell and mind you, if he fell, he'd been saved because there was that many supporters who were ready to catch him, you know. So we got by. The bus was going that slowly anyway, so because of the crowds, they're just fabulous scenes. And if anyway you get hard some of the tapes, there's tapes that are available, but there's a couple that's not been seen that on that bus trip was just hilarious,
Oh,
absolutely.
Neil Poynton's done an unbelievable
Well,
video diary of it.
I've seen a bit of it, and it's just great. And then of course with Gilles couldn't pass water for drug test him and Fulton. I mean, God, he comes out, he's only got his suit and tie on, there's no shirt, you know, and then he came where that ended up. No, just one of these great things. And even things after it, when we were, you know, it's just something you'll never, ever, ever forget, you know.
Mm. One of the things that I like that you did, you split the bonus money between every single member of the squad, not just those that started or those that came on. Basically, if you were in the squad that week, because remember Gary had the issue with the injury and ultimately didn't get on, but even those that missed out that were part of the traveling squad still felt part of it.
That's right. Everybody that played in any of the games or part of the first team squad, we didn't divide it. We just gave them a figure, a decent. And we're talking, and nowadays it's nothing to compare to, but in those days it was a lot of money. You know, the players got a really good win bonus because if you don't win, you're not going to pay it. If you're
No.
going to win, you're going to get more than the bonus that was paid out big time. You know, with all the things like what you can do and the prize money and all that. But I wanted to make sure that the people like say Katongo and Alan McManus and all the people who were in their suits, Neil Point, a lot of them got, which was very, very good for not being taken part, you know. Maybe
That's good management.
something like
That,
maybe just
that's what it is.
a couple of grand or something like that to
Yeah, it's not the amount.
no, it's not the amount, but like that. As I say, the Stubbs got their normal money like the first team, but the boys that had their clothes still on in the stand watching it got something that was they were really appreciative, you know. And we just had
Take
to,
us in, take us inside the dressing room at Celtic Park before the game. Do you remember your team talk?
we had done everything. Our team talk wasn't that we had done more or less each day a wee bit about. I didn't see any need to say. We just looked at what, we heard that Andy Gorham was maybe slightly injured, but he played. So we knew that, maybe better that than not a great goalkeeper and didn't make any mistakes. And I think the shot that dipped in front of him would have beat most goalkeepers. But we just sitting in there. It was all about, getting them to believe that Rangers, even though have a great side, if you look at the three midfield players that day, all good players at what they do, but they're no Gascoigne.
No.
Loudrop was up front on the line, but the main in there was Stuart McCall, who works his socks off, gets about, more known for winning the ball and giving it. Gattuso was the same type of player, all about the pitch, all energy and everything. Ferguson, oh no, we knew he maybe got forward at times, but again, not a Gascoigne or anything like that. So we found that they maybe lost a wee bit of creativity, or to open you up, and it would have to come from Loudrop. And he was the one that was really, we had to make sure. And we got lucky a couple of times when we hit the post, outside the post, and that. And he's got great skill, and it doesn't matter who he plays against. The top players in the world would have difficulty holding him. But he was a bit quieter than we expected. And that was down to a terrific back four performance and the goalkeeper. The rest, we just matched, and we gave as good as we got. But we did play not our normal style that season. We played to win the cup, and that was the most important. It doesn't matter how you play. As people say that,
Sure.
press after it was saying, "Oh, possession." I said, "I didn't."
Who cares? There's no diagrams on a scorecard. You should know that you're a golfer.
That's what I said to him. I said, "It doesn't matter about how we play. So Rangers could have as many corners as they like, as long as at the end of the day we had the ball in the net more times than down, and that's the key to
Yeah.
winning."
You spoke about Willie Young. He gave us that penalty just seconds into the game. Now, John Robertson has since told the story that you just happened to turn round as if to kind of, wow, he's given us a penalty, and the two of you kind of caught eyes. At that point, did you think, I wish I'd started the wee man?
No, but you can't think like that. We knew what we were happy with the team that we played. We knew we had it. Jim Hamilton was one that we started on the bench because we knew just McCann, even though he was on the left, got the wee license to drift in a wee bit, because we needed. And Thomas Flugel was a good attacking player and had a fantastic final. He was probably my man of the match, if I'm being honest. He did what we wanted exactly right. And mind you, they were all man of the matches, I suppose. But at the end of the day, we just had Stefan's pace through the middle, which we did think. We see when I said to you that the reason John was on the bench was because I had played him just off the striker, not as a striker, just behind the striker. His legs were obviously his age and that were coming to and things like that. And we know he never was the quickest. He was all about being in the box. But he was an intelligent footballer. Don't get wrong. He had a great football brain, John, and not just a great finisher. And I liked him when he played, especially against Dunfermline, when we won before. You still there? Yeah. So, I thought about putting him on, and I think John was a wee bit. He got caught wrapped up in it, and he said, "If if you're happy with leaving things as it is, then because who do you take off, And sometimes you're putting somebody in a position if he makes a mistake, and of course, all these things go in your mind. But we just stuck with it, say, look, let's see it through, and fortunately, it did. And there was nobody more delighted than John because he got something that he cherished. It was a Scottish Cup winning medal. And that was he was thrilled with that. He would have forgone playing there to
Of
as well
course.
as Hearts won the cup, like anybody would. But a lot of people ask me that, but we never. John and I got on great. We never fall out, and got great respect for him.
Your dad Jimmy was at the game. But your mum decided that a guild outing at Callender Park in Falkirk was more important than seeing her son win the Scottish Cup. Has she ever spoken to you about that since?
My dad, when I went, my dad, I said, I went to find out how many tickets I needed for the final. And when he counted, when he said he needed this, I says, but you're one short. He says, no, I just need five. He says, but you're one short. He says, and he just sort of hinted to my mum, you know. I says, what? Mum's not going. So I turned around to my mum and I said, are you not going to the final? And she says, Jim, she says, it's the Walliford Guild outing. And I says, it's a Walliford Guild outing? She says, yeah. She says, and I'm chairwoman or something. I says, it's a cup final, mum. Yeah, but this is Callender Park it's going to. And Falkirk as if it was somewhere in the world special, you know. I says, Callender Park? She says, yeah. Turns out it was on my mum's mind for years, and a lot of the people who were there I seen after it said she couldn't wait to get down to the nearest club or pub or something to watch it on the screen and see it. But she just felt she would want to be in two places at one time. But you're right, she didn't go. She preferred to go to the Walford Guild, which funny enough, I came across some just recently. Somebody sent me it. It's amazing. Um, it was they were asking to identify a certain person who was, and it was a picture on the Monday after it where I went down to my mum and dad's house to show them the cup because Chris let me take it home as long as I looked after it well. So he said, so there was somebody in the picture who was getting it, and the Scottish Cup was standing on my mum and dad's coal bunker, right, getting pictures with some people, neighbours all heard I was there and come round. And it was just all part of it, really, that made it really, really special. So it was just to take it down so that she didn't see it on the Saturday, but she seen it on the Monday. That was the main thing, you know.
One of my favorite stories of the whole weekend that you've told, and you've probably told it many times, but for anybody that hasn't heard it, you and maybe a couple of pals, on the Sunday morning, you were maybe going to Boots to get some tablets for a headache, for a hangover, or whatever, and you met an old boy, an old Hearts fan.
Yeah, just well, because of the celebrations, and we stayed along with some friends of mine that were at the game and as my guest and that, one of the best mates and his wife. And so we stayed at the Cali Hotel. And we got up the next morning because we had the parade to go. And so I'm up early, it's a bit rough, So my friend, so I went down to the little kiosk in the hotel and they said they don't have any resolve or anything like that. She says, no, but Shanwick Place, the Boots is open in Shanwick Place. I says, what? 7:30 in the morning, 8 o'clock in the morning or something. Yeah. And the place is deserted. There's nobody there. He goes out and walks along. And he could see him, he'd come walking along to me, and the long heart scarf was touching the ground. His head was bent over. It was just like, there'd be a guy, must have been in his 60s, 70s or something. And he was just walking towards us as we were waiting to cross the road. And I said to him, looks like you've had a good night. Right? Oh, he says, I've had a good night. He says, God bless that Jim Jefferies. Right? He hadn't looked up, he hadn't seen me. He just says, God bless that Jim Jefferies. And I looked at my mate and he walked past us, the boy. He stopped about 4 steps past us and said, I could hear him say, no, it couldn't have been. He thought he must have been dreaming it. And then, of course, when we went across into Boots, everybody was just stunned. I was the last person on a Sunday morning that they would see walking into Boots. And I says, listen, but they resolve. They opened the box, they opened the tab, they put it in the water, and they stirred it, never charged me a penny, and made me say, there you are, you can have it on the house. So
It's
that's what
amazing,
it just shows you. It means,
right?
the people, every time as I say, it gets brought up all the time, the greatest day of their lives, and it was for a lot of us.
And do you know what? It was the greatest weekend of our
Yeah,
lives for anybody that was there on the Sunday. And it was quiet in the morning, but in the afternoon, now I'll never have enough thanks for Dougie Dalgleish because I just asked him on the off chance, look, when the timing of the bus parades is on, Bill Barclay's show is on Radio 4, and Bill would fucking hate it if there was someone on the bus and we did live inserts, Jim and Billy and everything like that. And I said, any chance? And he says, I'll see what I can do. And he managed to get me on the bus. Now, we were sitting, sure, watching a Champions League game, and I sent you that photo. Now, this is a photo that I took back then, and I didn't know where I'd put it or where it had gone. And it's one of my favorite ever photos. And it's of your arm holding the cup at the back of the bus, because that's where our position was. And all you can see is Hearts supporters. When I sent you that photo, we'll get into how you felt about coming down the mound and whatever in just a second. But when I sent you that photo and you looked at that photo, what did you think?
Well, I just said to you as I sent your text back, I remembered it as if it was just a few years ago because the amount of people that came and followed that bus. I mean, we were only doing, we're hardly crawling along just the masses of people. And it wasn't just the first time, Mark. It was probably about 6 or 7 times I went to do it.
Yeah, of
It's
course. Well, that's the only time I was able to get a photo of it.
that's what the strive for years and never done it for 40, as you mentioned, 42 years, the Scottish Cup, to have it and let them see it because they believe they'd never have that. You've got to show them that it's for them as well as anybody at the club that were delighted to be part of it. The fans make sure they're part of it as well because they're seeing something that they've strived and had a lot of heartache. I mean, 86 must have been heartbreaking for a lot of these fans. I mean, and probably at the end of the day, I don't know if it'll ever happen. Hopefully it will, but it's been a long time since anybody outside the Rangers and Celtic have won the league, and that's the one that probably could only the only trophy that could maybe match what we've seen on that day if you were to win the championship, because that would be a massive, massive achievement. And I think winning the cup against a very, very good Rangers team, all right, wasn't their year because a lot of people were leaving, but you still have to respect that it had some great players and to beat them. I think if you had your choice, after being lost in two finals to them, the second one being a wee bit harsh on us, the 4-3 game.
Yep.
The first game was just because, and Gilles to get the man of the match after what happened to him in the first cup final was just all part and parcel of the process. I think how it all turns out just shows you what life can, what you can achieve. Goes from one being distraught, the man that
right.
ball going through his legs, to producing a display in the cup final that was just marvellous. Along with, don't get me wrong, not just the goalkeeper, but the back four, the midfield. They never left anything out. They gave everything for the club, and it took that to be successful, which is something they'll remember as well as everybody else.
I love the first thing you said to Bill Barclay. Again, you'll not remember this because you had so much going on. You just said to him, "Good FD," because that's his catchphrase, and he was happy for you and for Billy, even as a Hibs fan. Again, thank you for taking the time that day to speak to Bill. Approaching the closing stretch, we're going to bring it back up to date. After these, you're listening to Scarves Around the Funnel, sponsored by Forrest Hepburn and McDonald Signs, who've been offering creative sign and print solutions since the 1950s. So there you have it, the end of part 2 of our Jim Jefferies trilogy on episode 365 of Scarves Around the Funnel. Still to come in our final part. It's the second spell in charge of Jim Jefferies as Hearts manager, but this time under Vladimir Romanov. Also, we asked you on our social media channels to send in some questions. If you had one question you wanted to ask Jim Jefferies, what would it be? And we promised to select the best ones. We had loads of questions, so we've picked the top 20 questions, and Jim Jefferies will be answering them in part 3, along with telling us where it all went wrong the second time around when Vlad's involvement and his meddling ultimately became too much for Jim Jefferies to handle. And then Vlad, after deciding he kind of wanted to sack him but didn't really want to sack him, offered him another job instead of manager at half the wages that he was on. That's all still to come in part three of Scarves Around the Funnel, episode 365, with the former Hearts boss, Jim Jefferies.